Good day, and welcome to Donovan Answers Weekly Wraps. I am Viv Govender, and as usual, what we'll do is start with a macro general market segment before ending with the tech segment. In our macro segment this week, we're going to look at the US election as usual. We're going to be covering it until the results are known, which should be in about 2 weeks' time, hopefully. Then we're going to look at some numbers out of Boeing, as well as a look at why we saw the rand have a shock, weakening this week. Then in our tech segment, there's two areas to look at. Firstly is Tesla's results and the remarkable increase in their stock price. And then we're going to talk about agents and what they mean going forward. So let's start off with the US election. So there's no major changing in the pollings, but we are starting to get the first, early voter numbers coming out. We know like kind of the affiliation of the people these guys are, of the voters basically. So if you're a registered Republican or registered Democrat and you vote early, some states in the US record that. They record who you're voting for, but the assumption is if you're a Republican, you're going to be voting for Republicans, etc. It's not always the case. I mean, in this election especially, there's a number of Republicans that are voting for the Democrats, a number of Democrats that are voting for the Republicans. Liz Cheney, famous Republican, voted for Democrats. Robert Kennedy, probably the most famous Democratic family, the Kennedys. He's voting for Donald Trump. So it could, obviously be skewed, but early numbers look like this. The Republicans are doing significantly better than they were in the past. Now, in the past, the Republicans weren't happy or wanted to do early voting because they thought it was up for fraud, etc. But after the last election, I think they realized that they need to basically compete in the same field. You can't say, this tactic is open for fraud, therefore I won't use it when it gives you a disadvantage. So they're using it right now. The question arises is, like I said, how many of the people voting who are Republican are voting for Republicans, etc. And the second thing is, how many of these people basically are cannibalizing or voting that's going to be happening on election day. We're talking about significant numbers, 20% plus in places like Nevada. They already have voted for, the presidency. And those will obviously won't be voting on election day. So if Republicans are voting early, is it going to be so large a number that it's going to be really hurting their actual numbers on the election day voting? In which case their advantage does not look as great. But if you were sitting right now looking at the election, you would definitely rather be a Republican than a Democrat, because it seems that the polls are shifting in Trump's favor slightly, but more especially the actual turnout at where we can count turnouts in some states that actually record who the party affiliation of the voters are. Those places also look like the Republicans are getting out a strong turnout as well. Now moving on to Boeing. Boeing is in many ways the most important company in the world. And I'm not even being hyperbolic here. Why? Because the entire global kind of structure depends on Boeing. In a way, it does not depend on GM or Microsoft or Apple or any other company. Without Boeing, the US does not have a viable military. Without Boeing, you're taking half the world's ability to build airplanes for passenger transport out. The other one would be Airbus. Boeing is effectively an irreplaceable company to the US. Yet, in the last little while, it's becoming incredibly badly functioning. It's become incredibly, mired in scandals and so on. There's been a couple of big missteps for the company. Firstly, there was obviously the disasters with the plane crashes from a while back. Then there were the doors not shutting properly on the airplanes. And then more recently, there was the fact that they took astronauts to space and were not deemed safe enough to bring them back down and had to be rescued by SpaceX. So lots of missteps. But like I said, this is an essential company. Without Boeing, the US military does not function. You don't just have people on the ground with tanks and guns. You need the air power. In fact, the air power is probably more important than anything else. And Boeing is the backbone of the military air power in the US. Without Boeing, you don't have the passenger airlines that make modern commerce possible, except for Airbus. Even the Chinese can't build these things, by the way. They've come out and said it's much easier to go to space than to build a viable commercial airliner. So Boeing is essential, but the big trouble. And now recently they've had a dispute with their workers. There's been a strike called by the machinists. And even though it's not all the workers, these are very key workers. So, for instance, these are union machinists in the US. And even though some stuff is being done by non-union shops, there is actually, if you look into the details, when stuff is done by other people, still sometimes it has to go to these machinists to get them, just sorted out to make sure they're correct. So this is like a really important part of their business. And without these guys working, it really kind of grinds much of their operations to a halt. And this week, they rejected, I think, by over 60%, the latest offer given to them by Boeing, which included like, a $7,000, sorry, signing bonus for the thing. There was like a 30% wage increase, so it was not insignificant amounts of concessions given by Boeing, but they were rejected. Now, given the missteps that Boeing has had and massive losses it has recently as well, the company is facing a bit of a cash shortage, and that means that it might have to go to the market and get cash. Now, they say Boeing needs about $10 billion or so to operate, and it's below that at the moment in terms of cash reserves. So they filed a kind of a motion that gives them the ability to raise about $25 billion. Now, they won't raise the entire $25 billion in all likelihood. The number being talked about is closer to $15 billion that they're probably going to raise. But they're going to have to raise this money in order to basically, firstly, get their, balances in order so they can actually, continue to be, stable effectively. And the second thing is that they also need to raise the money so they can show the machinists that, we have the funds to do this. We can outlast you. And that obviously, I think is an important factor as well. That by having, an extra war chest, it kind of makes the machinists, the strikers, believe that, the company can outlast them. So that's an important factor to look forward to. Now, that being said, what do I think of Boeing overall? Look, it's very easy to invest in a company that is essential. It's too big to fail, effectively, because there's a limit to how far down it can go, and there's always going to be a solution where the government is going to have to step in and protect it. Because, like I said, you can't have this company go down. It literally is not about, we have no iPhones or we don't have, this kind of car in the country. No, it's like the US might not be a viable, military power against China, or have difficulty in a battle against China or Russia even, because they just don't have some of these hardware that they need. And Boeing is essential for that. So that's important to look at. Now, finally, we look at a weakening we saw in the rand this week and how it ties up to the BRICS conference that's been happening recently. So, when it comes to BRICS, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and the SE South Africa. Now, they've been recently adding a couple of other countries to it, and in fact, even the Palestinians, even though they are not an official country, have petitioned to join BRICS. It's turning out to be a bit of an anti-US Europe kind of coalition, the BRICS, kind of group basically, and to a certain extent, that's kind of useful as a balancing power. The problem is that you can't overdo it. Why? Well, this week we saw the rand weaken dramatically. Very shocking, weakening happening. Why? A rumor got out that South Africa had basically had some agreement with a Russian bank that was under sanctions by the US to provide a credit line. They've come out since and denied this, but the weakening of the rand was because of that. In South Africa, we basically, as much as we want to be part of BRICS and much we want to have good relationships with places like China and Russia, etc., we are very firmly in the US financial system. And I say the US financial system because it's primarily driven by the US, but it's also like the European/US financial system. Most of our investments internationally are there. We follow their rules. We basically we use their protocols like SWIFT, etc. If there was a bit of a conflict, for instance, between the US and China, like there is between the US and Russia, despite our affinity with China or whatever it may be, our financial system needs to go with the US. We cannot survive sanctioning like the Russians have experienced very easily. So what we are seeing here is indications that if we get too close to the BRICS system, especially if we get too close to things that are actively being prevented by the US and Europe, we could be facing sanctions. We could be facing difficulties. And it's not just go around financial systems as well. It's also around things like technology. One of the things the Americans have done recently is that they've put sanctions, as we've talked about many times, on things like chip sales to the the Chinese. So we've got to be careful about what we actually send to China. We've got to be careful of what we actually, agreements we have with the Russians and the Chinese especially. We have to make sure that we basically, even if we want to keep friendly with these guys, we have to follow the American rules, the European rules. Because if we don't, our system is much more dependent on the American European system than it is on the Chinese Russian system. And that's just the fact of the matter. Okay, now moving on to tech news. So firstly, results from Tesla. Tesla had some results. Big increase in sales expected next year, 20+%. Also, surprisingly, margins increasing. So the company is making more money per car sold and making more cars. So great news. We are likely to go through a drop in interest rates, which are good for cars because most people don't buy cars by cash; they buy cars, with credit, and therefore lower interest rates makes a big difference. And apparently, Tesla is still able to squeeze a bit more efficiencies out of its its manufacturing system. In fact, we've seen recently big drops in the price of Cybertrucks. And that kind of makes sense. The more you do something, the better you get at doing it, and the cheaper you can do it. So, good overall results from the company. But here is my little take on Tesla. Technically, this is meaningless. It means nothing to the value of that company. On a very practical level, but practically, it means nothing to the value of the company. Why? Tesla is worth more than the next several car companies in terms of size combined, in terms of market capitalization. You can add in like a Toyota, a Volkswagen, a GM, a Ford, add them together, worth less than Tesla. Now, Tesla does not make anywhere near as many cars as those companies combined. So how is it worth so much more than those companies combined? Well, because it can't just be valued as a car company. If Tesla was just a car company, even if it was the world's most successful car company, producing the most cars in the world, at the best profit margins, it's overvalued at the current valuation. That's just the fact. So if you were to value Tesla, you can't look at the car part of it. You can look at the part of it that actually is giving you this, currently last time I checked, $800 billion valuation. And that part is the AI, it is the robotaxi, it's the Optimus, it's the tech stuff. Now, that tech stuff, recently we had that release, the We Robot release, which the market didn't react very positively to. It fell about 10%. By the way, when this new results came out, the stock price went up 20%. So it more than made up for that loss. But like I said, the results that came out are not what determines the valuation of Tesla. It's not what determines whether Tesla is a good value company or not. It is going to be the stuff that happened in the We Robot thing. Is the robotaxi going to work? Is the Optimus going to work as people want? If that is the case, then yeah, Tesla probably undervalued at the moment. But if that's not the case, and then Tesla still becomes the most powerful car company in the world, selling the most cars in the world, more than Toyota, more than Volkswagen, still overvalued. Okay, so that's an interesting point to look at. It's the fact that the market seems to move a lot on these kind of sales reports from Tesla around EV sales, but as an EV company, Tesla is still a valuable car company, maybe the most valuable car company, but it's not a car company that's so valuable that every other car company virtually combined is not worth as much as it. That does not work. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to look at agents. And the reason I'm talking about this is that there's been a step up in the progress around agents in AI. And I was going to talk to you about what it means and why this is important. So Anthropic just came out with a new beta thing. So it's not for the public just yet, but it's just something they're showing to developers out there, which allows your AI system to take control of your computer. Look at what's on the screen, move the cursor, put keys, type stuff down, kind of like control your computer effectively. And this is like a step up around the agent kind of like timeline. And why agents important? Well, currently what you can do with AI is like ask it questions. Oh, AI, I want to start a business. Give me some ideas. It'll give you some ideas. AI, I want to do this thing here, activity. Give me some ideas. We'll give you some ideas. What you can't do is say, AI, I want to start a business. Start it for me. Sort it out. Just give me the money when you're done. That's what an agent can do for you, however. An agent can go and do that. An agent can go and source material, can basically hire people, can do this sort of stuff that is required to make a business go. buy stuff, sell stuff, that kind of thing. And that is the that's the kind of like the next step, let me say, in what's going to be happening with AI down the line. Yes, we like video, we like pictures, we like music and stuff, but they are not really going to make the world significantly richer. What is going to make the world richer is when you have a system, an AI system that you can ask to do something and have it do it. It doesn't need to be start a business. Build me a table if you have a system that can operate in the physical world, and it can basically source the lumber, get the lumber, cut it, make a table for you. That is what the downstream or the endpoint of agents looks like. And we are starting to see the first agents coming out. Now, we don't know if this stuff is going to work as well as I'm talking about. But the fact that we are seeing that the first thing is coming out right now makes me wonder that how soon are we going to start seeing agents that are going to be competent enough to act in the world in a way that you trust it? Where if you want to do something, you just ask your agent to do it for you and it sorts it out. And before we get to a point where probably we're going to do like businesses and like building tables and so on, this is what I think is the next like real danger to companies out there. When you have an agent and you can ask it to get you like a new Nike shoe or get you some kind of thing from the internet, like buy you something, and this thing will go out on the internet and it will scroll the internet and it'll find the cheapest thing with the best review and it'll get it for you, it'll pay for it and just get it to your house. What happens to a company like Amazon? What happens to a company that is a platform at the moment? What happens to a company that basically has a retail platform or some kind of user interface platform that kind of intermediates you and some supplier out there? Could be Uber, could be Amazon. There's a number of these companies out there that have become platforms that basically are between you and what you want to basically be buying. And the reason that they're successful is because the difficulty of you doing that job yourself is too great. So you kind of outsource it to an Amazon, you outsource it to an Uber or a Takealot or whoever it may be, and they basically charge a middleman fee for that. But if you have an agent, no. The agent basically will work as hard as it wants to. There's no effort involved from your point of view for your agent to do this stuff for you. If the agent can do it cheaper than Amazon or Uber can do it for you, well, then it's done. And with the agents, I think the kind of shift that we will see in the business landscape, especially the internet landscape, digital landscape initially, is going to be much larger than most people expect. And like I said, the first stuff is out right now. And let's see just how successful it's going to be. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to speaking to you guys again next week. Cheers.